Rescuers in India combed through mud and debris Saturday in a desperate search for survivors as the death toll from heavy monsoon rains climbed to 76, with nearly 90,000 others evacuated.
Thousands of anti-lockdown protesters gathered in Australia's two largest cities today, with several arrested in Sydney after violent clashes with police.
And Chinese shooter Yang Qian won the first gold of the Tokyo Olympics as Novak Djokovic prepared to launch his quest for tennis glory on day one of the pandemic-delayed games.
A strong earthquake shook the Philippines today, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. But they said it was deep, and local authorities said they didn't expect any damage. USGS said the 6.7 magnitude quake struck off the main island of Luzon at 4:48 a.m. local time at a depth of 112 kilometers. It was followed a few minutes later with a 5.8 magnitude quake in the same region that was also deep. It's strong. We're alarmed, according to Police Major Ronnie Aureliano in Calatagan Municipality, Batangas Province, which is south of Manila and near the epicenter of the quakes. He said it's raining very hard here as well, but our people here are used to earthquakes and they're aware of the duck hold and cover when there is an earthquake. Now, the Philippine Seismological Agency said it didn't expect damage and there was no tsunami warning or threat. This is according to the U.S. Tsunami Warning System. The archipelago is regularly rocked by quakes due to its location on the Pacific Ring of Fire, an arc of intense seismic activity that stretches from Japan through Southeast Asia and across the Pacific Basin.
Now, aftershocks continued to shake the municipality of Calatagan in Batangas after it was hit by a magnitude 6.6 earthquake early today. FIVOLCS Director Renato Solidum said the earthquake is not connected to volcanic activity around the Taal volcano. Take a look.
Ang lindol po kaninang 4:48 ng madaling araw ay sanhi ng pagkilos sa tinatawag nating Manila Trends, kung saan ang bloke ng bato nang gagaling sa West Philippine Sea ay sumusuksok pa ilalim at umaabot diyan sa ilalim ng areas ng Calatagan at Mindoro, no? At ito po ay walang kinalaman sa volcanic activity sa Taal Volcano. Ito po ay madalas na mangyari at minsan ang mga lindol dito sa bandang ilalim ng Calatagan ay nararamdaman dito sa Metro Manila. Hindi pa po ito, no? Kaya ba po to sa pinaghahandaan din nating isang earthquake scenario na manggagaling sa pagkilos ng West Valley Fault. Ang isa pang scenario na ginagamit natin sa paghahanda sa isang lindol sa Kamaynilaan at mga karatig na probinsya ay pagkilos along the Manila Trends na posibleng mas malakas pa ang mangyari na magnitude, pero dahil ito ay mas malayo sa Kamaynilaan, ang pag-uga ay hindi kasing lakas ng lindol na idudulot ng pagkilos ng West Valley Fault. Ang kaibahan lang dito, maliban sa malakas na pag-inig na mararamdaman, ay posibleng magdulot ng tsunami na pwedeng maapektuhan ng iba't ibang mga dalampasigan sa kanlurang bahagi ng Luzon, Mindoro at Palawan, kasama na ang Metro Manila. Pero yung lindol po kanina ay malalim, mga 123 kilometers, kaya po hindi ito magdudulot ng tsunami. At kaya naman ang naramdamang pag-inig sa ibabaw ay hindi ganong kalakas. Kung sakaling mababaw po ang lindol, kunyari less than 50 kilometers, yung enerhiya na pinakawala sa ilalim ay hindi masyadong mababawasan kasi manipis lamang ang kapal ng batong dadaanan. Ang bato po ay nag-absorb ng enerhiya, kaya mas delikado kapag mas mababaw ang mga malalakas na paglindol. Sa mga nabilang po natin mga aftershocks, mahigit 80 na po ang nangyari, at ang pinakamalakas dito ay nangyari 4:57 o 9 minutes after the earthquake na may magnitude 5.5. Kadalasan po sa mga lindol na sumusunod sa isang malaki, mga 1 unit of magnitude lower, so sabihin natin 5.5, 5.6, nangyari po yung kanina. Pero sa history po ng Manila Trends, hindi po natin inaalis na magkaroon pa ng mas malalakas na lindol dyan sa lugar ng offshore ng Mindoro Zambales area at kasama na rin ang Batangas. Pero kung kailan ito mangyari, hindi natin masasabi. Ang kailangan lang, paghandaan natin ang mga malalaking paglindol na pwede manggaling dito.
In the related news, Malacanang today also advised the public to stay alert after the magnitude 6.7 earthquake rocked Calatagan in Batangas. In a press statement, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque also called for the public cooperation following the strong quake. Secretary Roque said, "We ask residents of affected areas to remain alert and vigilant, take precautionary measures, and cooperate with their respective local authorities in case of an evacuation." In its initial earthquake bulletin, the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology said it traced the earthquake's epicenter at 16 kilometers southwest of Calatagan, Batangas. The tremor reported at 4:49 a.m. was tectonic in origin, which means there was a movement in the Earth's crust. It was immediately followed by a magnitude 5.5 aftershock at 4:56 a.m. PHIVOX reported 30 aftershocks as of 10:45 a.m., the majority of which was at magnitude 2. It initially reported that the quake was at a magnitude of 6.7, but later reduced it to magnitude 6.6. Roque said the Department of Public Works and Highways has deployed teams that would assess the structural integrity of or damage, if any, to key infrastructure in Metro Manila, Calabarzon, and Mimaropa.
To India now, where rescuers comb through mud and debris in a desperate search for survivors as the death toll from heavy monsoon rains climbed to 76, with nearly 90,000 others evacuated. Take a look.
नदी का फ्लो बढ़ते सभी गांव में पानी का लेवल बढ़ गया था। उसी का अंतर लोकल प्रशासन के मदद से और हमारा टीम एनडीआरएफ से
More than half of the deaths occurred in hard-hit Raigat, south of Mumbai, where landslides buried dozens of houses, killing 47, and with other 53 feared trapped under layers of mud. The downpour caused the Savitri River to burst its banks, leaving the town of Mahad completely inaccessible by road and prompting terrified residents to climb onto rooftops and upper floors to escape swelling waters. National Disaster Response Force, or NDRF teams, could not land their choppers in the area due to bad weather on Friday, but were eventually able to rescue locals as waters began to recede. The GOA offered its worst floods in decades, according to the state's chief minister, Pramod Sawant, who said the monsoons had caused widespread damage in the region, but no casualties.
To Europe now, the latest death toll from floods that hit Western Germany this month stands at 180, with about 150 still missing, according to authorities. With more rain forecast this weekend, German meteorological services called for vigilance. In the Rhineland-Palatinate region, which was the worst hit by the storms, 132 are now confirmed dead and 766 injured, according to police. The police are searching with the help of helicopters and about 30 sniffer dogs. In the neighboring region of North Rhine-Westphalia, 47 people died. Cologne police said they were looking for 2 people who were missing or could not be reached. 1 person also died in Bavaria, while Belgium accounted for 36 deaths, taking the total toll in Europe to 216. In the neighboring region of North Rhine-Westphalia, 47 died. Cologne police said they were looking for people who were missing or could not be reached. Also died in Bavaria, while Belgium accounted for 36 deaths, taking the total toll in Europe to 216.
Extreme weather events dominate the list of disasters in terms of both the human and economic toll over the past 50 years, according to a comprehensive analysis by the World Meteorological Organization. Let's listen in.
The World Meteorological Organization today said that water-related hazards dominate the list of disasters in terms of both the human and economic toll over the past 50 years. According to WMO's Atlas of Mortality and Economic Losses from Weather, Climate, and Water Extremes, of the top 10 disasters, the hazards that led to the largest human losses during the period have been droughts, with 650,000 deaths, storms, 577,232 deaths, floods, 58,700 deaths, and extreme temperature, 55,736 deaths. Said that no country, developed or developing, is immune. With regard to economic losses, the top 10 events include storms and floods. The data shows that over the 50-year period, weather, climate, and water hazards accounted for 50% of all disasters, 45% of all reported deaths, and 74% of all reported economic losses at the global level.
Meanwhile, China shut down ports and railways today as it braced for Typhoon Infa as parts of the country struggle to recover from the devastating floods earlier this week. Infa is forecast to make landfall late Sunday in the eastern coastal province of Zhejiang near Shanghai, according to the official Xinhua news agency. Chinese authorities have issued a level 3 alert, the third highest for the storm, while more than 100 trains traveling through the region have been canceled, according to China Railway. Shanghai authorities closed some public parks and museums and warned residents on Saturday to stop large-scale outdoor gatherings and to stay indoors. In central China's Henan province, meanwhile, where historic floods this week have now killed at least 58 people, authorities are gradually clearing and reopening roads blocked with vehicles and debris. Millions have been affected by the floods, with some trapped without fresh food or water for days and others lifted to safety in excavator buckets. More than 100 or 495,000 people have been evacuated, according to the Henan government, with the flooding causing billions of dollars in losses.
Local authorities here in the Philippines said they detected 17 more cases of the highly infectious Delta variant of COVID-19 in the country. Local transmission of the variant driving surges in neighboring countries was confirmed just 2 days ago. Of the 17 newly detected cases, the Department of Health said in a statement, 12 are classified as local, 9 had indicated addresses in Metro Manila, while another 3 were in Calabarzon. Dr. Edsel Marie Salvana, infectious diseases expert and member of the DOH Technical Advisory Group, on Saturday advised the public to strictly follow the health protocols and get vaccinated as soon as possible. He noted that physical distancing and wearing of mask and face shield also work and can interrupt transmission. In his social media page, Salvana warned that the variant has a 1,000-fold higher viral load than the old virus and is 3 times more contagious and can be more severe even in young people. Reports showed that the Delta variant, which was first detected in India, has been driving the surge in infections in neighboring Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. The Philippines has imposed a temporary ban on the entry of travelers from these countries until the 31st of this month to stem the further spread of the Delta variant.
Meanwhile, the Department of Health reported today 6,778 more recoveries, pushing the country's total recovery count to 1,461,749 as of today. In its latest case bulletin, the agency also logged 6,216 new infections and 241 deaths, bringing the number of active cases and death toll to 54,401 and 27,131 respectively. The technical issue reported about COVID Kaya has been resolved. The unusually high number of deaths reported today can be attributed to a backlog of cases being updated after the resolution of the system error, that according to the DOH. Out of the 45,592 individuals tested since July 22, DOH said 13%, or at least 5,000 926 turned out positive for SARS-CoV-2. The DOH noted that all laboratories were operational on July 22, but 2 were not able to submit their data to the COVID-19 document repository systems. Since the pandemic started, the country has so far recorded 1,543,281 in total confirmed cases. 3.5% are undergoing treatment, 94.7% are recoveries, while 1.76% are fatalities.
In other news, thousands of anti-lockdown protesters gathered in Australia's 2 largest cities today, with several arrested in Sydney after violent clashes with police. A group charged the mounted officers while throwing pot plants and bottles as opponents of Sydney's month-long stay-at-home orders took to the streets. In Melbourne, local media said thousands of protesters had thronged the streets after gathering outside the state parliament in the early afternoon. Maskless demonstrators flouted rules on non-essential travel and public gatherings a day after authorities suggested restrictions could remain in place until October. Police in Sydney said they had launched a high-visibility policing operation in response to the protest. Organizers had dubbed the protest a freedom rally and publicized it on social media pages frequently used to spread vaccine disinformation and conspiracy theories. Police said they supported free speech and peaceful assembly. However, today's protest is in breach of the current COVID-19 public health orders.
Ireland has joined the EU COVID travel pass system after a ransomware attack delay. Now here's Rwana Bianca Arino for the details.
Ireland dramatically loosened international travel restrictions, joining an EU-wide pandemic passport scheme weeks later than the rest of the bloc after a ransomware attack hobbled healthcare IT systems. Passengers arriving from the EU, Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland are no longer required to quarantine if they are fully vaccinated, have recently recovered from coronavirus, or received a negative PCR test in the past 72 hours. Previously, all European arrivals were required to quarantine at home for up to 2 weeks with the possibility of early release on receipt of a negative PCR test. All EU member states were connected to a matching digital COVID certificate system on July 1. The system uses a QR code to verify whether the bearer is vaccinated with an approved jab, recently recovered from coronavirus, or has received a negative test result. Ireland's participation was delayed after its healthcare IT systems were paralyzed by a ransomware attack in mid-May. The Republic's health authority was forced to shut down its computer systems after what one government minister described as possibly the most significant cybercrime attack on the Irish state. Since then, the Healthcare Services Executive, HSE, has been clawing back control of its IT systems. In a Sunday evening statement, the Irish government said over 1.1 million travel certificates have now been emailed to residents, with an additional 600,000 sent by post. This represents another milestone on our road to recovery, the government said in a statement. However, if you are not vaccinated, the public health advice is that you avoid high-risk activities. This includes international travel. The government said the changes mean arrival from other countries, including neighboring Great Britain, will be able to skip quarantine if they provide proof of vaccination or recent recovery from the virus. Ireland has suffered 5,018 deaths from coronavirus, according to latest official figures. Case figures are on the rise as the Delta variant has become more established in the country, which recently delayed the reopening of indoor hospitality to fend off increased infections. However, vaccine uptake is high. Government data shows 5.1 million doses have so far been administered across the Republic, home to 4.9 million. Nearly 80% of adults in Ireland have now received at least one dose of COVID-19 vaccine, the Department of Health said. I'm Juana Biancarino from the EBC Bureau of United Kingdom, and I would like to greet the members of the Iglesia Ni Cristo all over the world, and to the Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, a happy 107th anniversary.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Metro Manila was placed under general community quarantine yesterday with heightened restrictions until the end of the month, where all children aged 5 and above would remain indoors. Malacanang announced this after President Rodrigo Duterte approved the recommendation of the Interagency Task Force to place the National Capital Region under GCQ with heightened restrictions. Take a look.
Magandang maulan na Biyernes po sa inyong lahat, no? Balitang IATF po tayo, inaprubahan po ng ating presidente ang rekomendasyon ng inyong IATF na ipasailalim ang National Capital Region at 4 pang probinsya sa ilalim po ng GCQ with heightened restrictions. Ito po ay mula July 23, 2021 hanggang July 31, 2021. Nasa ilalim din po ng GCQ with heightened restrictions ang mga probinsya ng Ilocos Norte, Ilocos Sur na dati-rati po ay nasa MGCQ. Galing naman po sa MECQ, Davao de Oro and Davao del Norte ay mapapasailalim po sa GCQ with heightened restrictions. Ang Davao del Sur po na dati po ay MECQ ay mapapasailalim po sa GCQ simula po ng July 23, 2021 hanggang July 31, 2021. Now, kinakailangan po lahat ng biyahero na papasok po sa ating bayan ay magpakita po ng katunayan at kinakailangan sumunod sa testing and quarantine protocols na inaprubahan po ng IATF. Ang Bureau of Quarantine po ay kinakailangan mag-identify ng mga close contacts sa mga eroplano at vessel ng mga tao na nakumpirma po na merong case and kinakailangan i-closely monitor po itong mga close contact na ito. Yung ating infection prevention and controls protocols po ay kinakailangan sundin at ang lahat po ng lokal na pamahalaan ay kinakailangan maghanda po ng kanilang clear transportation arrangements and quarantine accommodation. Lahat po ng LGUs ay kinakailangan mag-closely monitor sa appearance ng kahit anong senyales po o simptomas ng mga dumarating habang kinukumpleto po ang kanilang quarantine at kinakailangan magpatupad po ng RT-PCR test after detection of symptoms. Karagdagan pa dito, kinakailangan magkaroon po ng health assessment para po sa lahat ng mga dumarating pagkatapos po ng kanilang isolation or quarantine period. Now, inaprubahan din po ng IATF kahapon yung continuous and strengthened implementation ng Prevent, Detect, Isolate, Treat, Reintegrate strategy. Kasama po dito sa PDITR strategy ang active case finding, intensified contact tracing, immediate quarantine isolation, which should be preferably in a facility or declaration of localized enhanced community quarantine down to the zone or barangay levels, stricter implementation and observance of minimum public health standards, and fast-track development of COVID-19 vaccines. Para po magkaroon tayo ng patuloy na ligtas na mga economic activities, hiningi po ng IATF ang mga establishments na ikonsidera na magkaroon ng mas marami pong outdoor spaces na gagawing temporary outdoor weekend markets and dining spaces and permanently accessible urban green spaces outdoor recreational spaces, and public sanitation facilities. Finally, lahat po ng mga dayuhang asawa o di naman kaya mga magulang or mga anak ng mga Filipino citizens na meron pong 98 visas ay po pwede pong makapasok ng Pilipinas without the need of an entry exemption simula po ng August 1, 2021.
Meanwhile, Vietnam locked down 8 million people in Hanoi today, the latest attempt to curb a serious coronavirus outbreak that has already forced a third of the country to stay home. Authorities reported more than 7,000 new infections across the nation on Friday, the third record number of daily infections in a week. The center of the normally bustling capital was empty and shops were shuttered as the lockdown came into force, although people could still be seen on the streets in the outskirts of the city. After successfully containing limited coronavirus outbreaks last year, Vietnam has seen cases skyrocket since late April. About a third of Vietnam's 100 million people are already subject to lockdown orders. But the outbreak has showed few signs of slowing, and southern commercial hub Ho Chi Minh City, which has recorded the majority of recent cases, extended its stay-at-home order on Friday.
Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeire said it is important for more Filipinos to get vaccinated as soon as possible, as hospitalization and severe infections due to the Delta variant recorded abroad were mostly those with no inoculation. Take a look.
Kumpara daw po sa mga ayon po sa ating mga talaan, those that we have been able to verify already, meron po dun sa ating existing 47 cases ngayon of Delta variant, naka-receive po siya ng 2 doses ng bakuna. Meron naman pong 4 naka-receive ng isa lang dose ng bakuna. 18 po ang hindi bakunado, and the rest are for verification. Now, if we look at the experiences in other countries and evidences that are being published, in the United States, they say that almost 98% of those being hospitalized now and having severe cases are those who are not vaccinated. The same also in the United Kingdom and in Portugal, where many of their residents are already vaccinated. So ito po talagang datos ay nagpapakita na epektibo po yung mga bakunang meron tayo sa ngayon. Because we are saying right now that most of these individuals na talagang naapektuhan po nitong Delta variant sa ibang bansa ay hindi mga bakunado. So yan lang po ay nagpapakita na kailangan po natin ng bakuna para tayo ay maprotektahan against severe illness and death.
The DOH has so far recorded a total of 64 Delta variant cases in the country after the detection of 17 more infections earlier today.
Meanwhile, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern announced the country's travel bubble with Australia will be suspended for at least 8 weeks. Take a look.
COVID has changed, and so we must. It's on that basis that the Director General of Health has recommended and Cabinet has agreed to suspend quarantine-free travel with Australia. From 11:59 p.m. tonight, Australians will no longer be able to enter New Zealand quarantine-free. This will be in place for at least the next 8 weeks.
Now that means Australians will no longer have quarantine-free entry to New Zealand. Australia has seen skyrocketing new infections, with only 12% of the population fully vaccinated.
Back here in the Philippines, the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases has modified the protocols for fully vaccinated individuals who can avail of green lanes. Take a look.
Rinibisa rin po ng ating IATF yung mga bansa na nasa kategory po ng green lanes. No? Ito po ay, itong mga bansang nasa green lanes po ay po pwedeng magkaroon po, yung mga pasahero na galing dito ay magkakaroon lang po ng 7 araw na quarantine at PCR test matapos po ang kanilang pang-5 araw ng quarantine. Now, kinakailangan po lahat ng pasahero galing po sa green list countries ay magpakita ng unang-una na ang pinanggalingan po nila ay green list country, jurisdiction or territory, na sila po ay nanatili exclusively doon sa mga green list countries at mga jurisdiction sa nakalipas na 14 na araw bago po sila dumating sa Pilipinas, at sila po ay fully vaccinated whether in the Philippines or abroad. Kinakailangan ma-verify po yung kanilang vaccination status independently or makumpirma po ng mga otoridad sa Pilipinas na bilang valid and authentic upon arrival in the Philippines. Para po doon sa mga bansa na qualified sa green lanes o mga pasahero na galing dito sa mga bansa na galing sa green lanes, the Bureau of Quarantine shall ensure strict symptom monitoring habang sila po ay nasa facility quarantine. Even if yung RT-PCR po nila ay negatibo, yung mga pasahero na galing po sa green countries ay kinakailangan magkumpleto pa rin po ng 7-day facility-based quarantine. Kung ang RT-PCR test po ay positibo, kinakailangan po sundin ang prescribed na isolation protocols at pagkatapos po ng quarantine, mag-i-issue po ang Bureau of Quarantine ng quarantine certificate na magpapakita kung ano ang status ng individual pagdating sa pagbabakuna, no? At kinakailangan magkaroon pa rin po ng self-monitoring matapos po ng 7 araw. Now, para naman po dun sa ibang mga pasahero na darating po sa Pilipinas na hindi po nanggagaling sa green lanes, well, 10-day facility quarantine pa rin po. At pagkatapos po niyan, 4-day home quarantine, yung PCR test po nila ay sa pang-7 araw.
And before we go on a break, dignitaries and public figures from around the world are already sending their greetings ahead of the 107th anniversary of the Iglesia Ni Cristo, and among them is a member of the U.S. Congress. Alfred Acenas from our EBC Hawaii Pacific Bureau has this brief update.
Aloha, everyone. Right now, we're in downtown Honolulu, where we just came from the office of U.S. Congressman Ed Case, who represents the 1st District of Hawaii to include Honolulu and urban Oahu. And his office provided a certificate of congressional recognition presented to the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ, in celebration of her 107th anniversary, which will be on July 27. And in their certificate, he also mentioned the INC as a global church, keeping in mind that Hawaii also is a very important landmark for church members throughout the world, as this was the place where the overseas mission of the INC began on July 27, 1968. Stay tuned for related news and other news from around the world right here on Eagle News. I'm Alfred Acenas. We live in interesting times.
Eagle News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business, your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights. Sharpen your instincts for smart decision-making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Welcome back to the news. The Duterte administration is banking on key policy measures and reforms, including those aimed at placing the Philippines in a strong position to weather the impact of the pandemic, to boost recovery to achieve an upper middle income country status by next year. The Development Budget Coordination Committee, or DBCC, retained its growth targets of 6% to 7% this year and 7% to 9% in 2022. The Philippine economy shrank a record 9.5% in 2020 and posted a smaller contraction of 4.2% in the first quarter of 2021, but was expected to stage a strong recovery before the end of the year with a rollout of vaccines against COVID-19. Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Carl Kendrick Chua said this is a strong signal for the return to pre-pandemic or 2019 output levels by 2022. Chua said the three pillars that will govern economic recovery include the safe reopening of the economy, the implementation of the recovery program, and the timely implementation of the government's vaccine deployment program.
In other business news, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Governor Benjamin Diokno has highlighted the need to keep the central bank's accommodative stance to boost economic recovery after citing the improvement in domestic activities as the government eased some movement restrictions. In a virtual briefing for the 2021 second quarter inflation report, Diokno said average inflation in April to June, although still above the government's 2% to 4% target band, decelerated to 4.3% from the previous 3 months' 4.5%. Take a look.
In the coming months, the continued facilitation of meat imports and other targeted programs to augment domestic supply should further temper pressures on food prices and inflation. Given current trends, our latest projections show that average inflation is likely to settle near the upper end of the target range in 2021 before easing towards the midpoint of the target range in 2022 and 2023. Meanwhile, the gross domestic product contracted anew in the first quarter of 2021, but at a relatively subdued rate of 4.2%, owing in part to the government's calibrated approach in mitigating the transmission of the virus. Keeping an accommodative stance shall also help us counteract risk aversion among banks, which continues to temper lending activity despite ample liquidity in the financial system.
Meanwhile, U.S. stocks rocketed to fresh records yesterday, with the Dow finishing above 35,000 for the first time in anticipation of more blowout earnings next week after this week's positive round of results. All three major indices finished the week at records, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average surging 0.7% to close at 35,061.55. The broad-based S&P 500 jumped 1.0% to end at 4,411.79, while the tech-rich Nasdaq Composite Index also rose 1.0% to 14,836.99. The records marked a sharp reversal from the sentiment at the start of the week, when the Dow suffered its worst session of 2021 amid worries over rising infections of the Delta variant of the coronavirus. But Maurice Ogg of Tower Bridge Advisors said many of the companies that reported this week were upbeat about the outlook and not overly worried about the Delta variant.
The Corfo Lagoon in Patagonia, southern Argentina, has turned pink after waste from fishing companies was dumped in its waters, sparking alarm among local residents and authorities. Take a look. The coloring is due to the preservative sodium sulfide, an antibacterial agent, which also contaminates the water table of the Chubut River and the water supply of cities in the region. The law orders the treatment of such liquids before being dumped. Federico Restrepo, a Colombian engineer, environmentalist, and virologist, and a local resident told AFP. The lake, 10 to 15 hectares in area, is situated in the industrial park of Chelu, which was founded by Welsh settlers over 150 years ago. Fisheries are important for the 600,000 inhabitants of Chubut, along with agriculture, the food industry, and tourism. Eagle News, we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Sa Hulyo 26, mag-uulat sa bayan si Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. Alamin ang mga ilalahad na pulisiya, isusulong na panukala, plano at nagawa ng Duterte Administration. State of the Nation Address. Mapapanood sa Net25 at eaglenewslive.com at mapapakinggan sa Radyo Agila DZEC 1062 kHz. Abangan din ang aming online updates sa Eagle News Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, at website eaglenews.ph. State of the Nation Address, a Net25 special coverage.
Welcome back to the news. Tokyo 2020 spokesman Takaya Masa says choosing Naomi Osaka as the final torch or Olympic torch bearer would help convey the new image of Tokyo 2020. Take a look.
I don't know exactly when it was decided, but at the end of the day, the organizing committee decided that Naomi, she is the one to do the final torchbearer. And this morning I have learned that the entire tennis world is also proud of having her as the final torchbearer. But that's something we are pleased to hear. Hopefully we are able to convey the new images of the Tokyo 2020 and this country.
A Japanese tennis star, Naomi Osaka, lit the Olympic cauldron as the Tokyo Games opened yesterday after a year's delay due to the pandemic and with the threats of coronavirus hanging over the competition. Osaka, whose identity had been kept secret ahead of the ceremony, was handed the torch by a group of children from the region around Fukushima, which was devastated by a tsunami and a nuclear disaster in 2011. She tweeted that lighting the cauldron was undoubtedly the greatest athletic achievement and honor she will ever have in her life. The lighting of the futuristic cauldron was an uplifting moment in a low-key ceremony that unfolded in front of fewer than 1,000 VIPs and several thousand athletes.
Meanwhile, Tokyo Olympic organizers brought forward rowing events as a protective measure Saturday As a tropical storm heads towards the Japanese capital, tropical storm Nepartak with gusts of up to 90 kilometers per hour was still about 1,800 kilometers south of Tokyo on Saturday, according to the Japan Meteorological Agency. But it is on course to arrive in the Olympic host city by Tuesday, according to the weather agency. Olympic organizers said they were following the track of the storm and had decided to hold the rowing event scheduled for Monday over the weekend instead. In a weather update, World Sailing warned that Olympic competition from the 26th to the 28th may be affected, though organizers have not yet announced any changes. Japan's typhoon season runs from around May to October, peaking in August and September.
Meanwhile, outside, many people demonstrated. They claim the games are putting public health in Japan at risk. Stop the Olympics, chant protesters gathered outside the Japan National Stadium during the Olympics opening ceremony held after a year's delay due to the pandemic and with the threat of coronavirus hanging over the competition. The pandemic has not been the only hiccup, with scandals ranging from corruption during the bidding process to plagiarism allegations over the design of the Tokyo 2020 logo.
Meanwhile, Chinese shooter Yang Chan won the first gold of the Tokyo Olympics today, as Novak Djokovic is now preparing to launch his quest for tennis glory on day one of the pandemic-delayed games. Now, Yang snatched a dramatic last-shot victory from Russia's Anastasia Galashina in the women's 10-meter air rifle as attention switched from the troubled build-up to the sporting action now after Friday's opening ceremony that was crowned by tennis star Naomi Osaka lighting the Olympic cauldron. China's Yang claimed gold in the women's 10-meter air rifle with an Olympic record score of 251.8, edging ahead of Russian Anastasia Galashina on 251.1 and Switzerland's Nina Christen on 230.6.
Nesty Petesha's quest for a Tokyo Olympics gold got off to a good start today after she beat Marcela Tsakobi-Mathieu of Congo in the first round of the women's featherweight boxing event at the Kokugikan Arena in the Japanese capital. After a tight first round, Petesha showed her dominant form in the final 6 minutes to edge Mathieu. In the unanimous decision favoring Petesha, one of the 5 judges had it 29-28, but the other 4 jurors all gave her a perfect 30. A tall order awaits Petesha in the second phase on Monday as she battles no less than top seed Lin Ti-yun of Chinese Taipei. While Petesha scored a win to start her medal quest, the same cannot be said of Kurt Barbosa. South Korean Jang Jin quickly showed why he is the reigning world #1 in the men's under 58 kilogram Taekwondo division, beating Barbosa in the first round of the Tokyo Olympics Taekwondo event. It was smooth sailing for Jang, dominating Barbosa in the first 2 rounds and leading 26-6 before the officials put the mercy rule, that is the point gap rule, to play. Barbosa, however, is not yet out of the medal running, as a repechage for the bronze might happen if Jang goes all the way to the final round.
And judoka Naohisa Takato won Japan's first gold medal of the Tokyo Olympics today with victory in the men's 60-kilogram final at the iconic Nippon Budokan. The 28-year-old made up for his disappointing bronze medal in Rio 5 years ago by getting the host nation up and running in the games with a win over Taiwan's Yang Yung-wei. Earlier, Japanese world #3 Funa Tonaki had suffered an agonizing defeat by Kosovo's Distria Krasniki in the women's 48-kilogram final. Her silver, though, was her country's first medal of the Games. Takato, a three-time world champion, got the better of a tense encounter with Yang, winning 3 minutes and 40 seconds into a golden score. Yang was called for a third Shido penalty to give Takato, who lost in the 2016 quarterfinals, victory.
We'll be
Getting
seeing
exciting,
a lot of, yeah, we'll be seeing a lot of inspiring stories while we cover this. And did you watch the opening ceremony?
Yes, I did.
My favorite moment there was the dancer in a wheelchair.
Yes.
To represent, of course, Paralympians. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great weekend. I'm CJ Hero. We'll see you back on Monday.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back on Monday. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.